The testimony chamber was silent. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in their seats watching the small figure at the center of the room. Rila stood on the witness platform, her body made of something that looked like living crystal. Light passed through her skin, creating soft rainbow colors. But today, those colors looked dull and gray. She was only 8 years old. Her hands shook as she held the edge of the platform. The microphone in front of her hummed softly, waiting for her to speak. Behind her, a guardian from her species stood ready to help if she needed it. But Rila had asked to do this alone. Council Director Thren sat at the high table. His feathers were bright blue and gold, moving slowly in patterns that showed he was paying attention. He was old, even for his species. He had seen many things in his time leading the Galactic Council, but today felt different. "Child," Thren said gently, his voice carrying through the chamber without technology. "Tell us what happened at Tarna Station." "Take your time." Rila took a deep breath. Her crystalline body flickered with dark blue, the color of fear in her species. She began to speak. "It was 3 weeks ago," she said. Her voice was small but clear. "I was with my parents in our quarters. We were having dinner, then the alarm started." In the audience, Ambassador Hyun leaned forward. She was human, one of only 12 human representatives at the station. Her dark hair was pulled back and her face showed worry. Next to her, Dr. Minho made notes on his tablet. He was also human, a scientist who studied how different species think and feel. Rila continued her story. "The alarms were so loud. Red lights were flashing everywhere. My father opened the door and looked outside. I remember his face when he turned back to us. He was scared. My father was never scared." "What did your father say?" Thren asked. "He said we had to run. He said there was poison gas in the air. A machine had broken and the gas was spreading fast. We had to get to the escape pods." Rila's colors flickered again, darker this time. "We ran into the corridor. There were so many people. Everyone was running and screaming. My people, the Velkari, we can feel what others feel. It's like voices in our heads, but they're feelings instead of words. And everyone was so afraid." She closed her eyes, remembering. It was too much. All that fear from everyone around us. It hurt. It felt like my head was breaking. I couldn't think. I couldn't move right. My mother was holding my hand, pulling me forward. But there were too many people. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even the journalist had stopped recording to just listen. "Someone pushed us," Rila said. A big group of people came from another corridor. They were running fast. My mother's hand slipped from mine. I tried to hold on, but there were too many bodies between us. I screamed for her, but I couldn't hear my own voice over all the noise. I got pushed to the side into a small space between the walls. A maintenance area, I think. The crowd kept running past. I tried to get back into the corridor, but I couldn't. And all those feelings from everyone, all that fear, it was crushing me. Rila opened her eyes and looked directly at the council. I collapsed. My body just stopped working. When Velkari feel too much from too many minds, we shut down. It's like our brains turn off to protect us. I was lying there and I could hear people running past, but I couldn't move. I couldn't call for help. Did anyone stop? Thren asked quietly. Rila shook her head. Station security ran past. They were Drellian guards. They looked at me, but they kept running. Then a Karathi family came by. The father saw me. He stopped for a moment. But Karathi are telepathic too, like my people. If he touched me while I was overloaded, it would hurt him. So they left. More people passed. I saw their faces. Some looked sad. Some looked scared. But they all kept running. And I understood. The gas was coming. Everyone needed to save themselves. It made sense. Ambassador Hyun felt her throat tighten. She knew what was coming next. Then she came, Rila said softly. The human. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Her name was Jisoo. She was an engineer. She was running like everyone else. She had a bag on her shoulder, full of things she needed to survive. She was heading for the escape pods. Then she saw me. Rila's color shifted, showing purple now, the color of confusion in her species. She stopped. Just stopped in the middle of the corridor. People were pushing past her, shouting at her to move. But she just stared at me. I could feel her emotions even through my overload. She was terrified. She wanted to live. Every part of her body was telling her to run. For 3 heartbeats she stood there. I thought she would leave like the others. But then she dropped to her knees next to me. She reached out and pulled me into her arms. Rila's voice cracked. When she touched me, all my fear, all my pain, all the terror from everyone around us, it went into her. I felt it happen. Humans don't have natural shields against telepathy. Everything I was feeling, she felt it too. All at once, blood came from her nose. Her hands shook. Her eyes looked strange, like she couldn't see properly, but she didn't let go. She held me tighter and started talking. I didn't know human language then, but I understood the feeling behind the words. She was telling me I wasn't alone. She picked me up. I'm not small for my age, and she wasn't very big. But she carried me. She carried me through the corridors while poison gas was spreading. She carried me while feeling all my fear on top of her own. She carried me while her body was breaking from the telepathic feedback. Tears were running down Rila's crystalline face now, looking like liquid light. And she sang. I don't know why. Maybe humans sing when they're afraid. But she sang to me in her language while she carried me. Her voice was shaking. I could feel her lungs burning from the gas. But she kept singing. Council Director Thren's feathers had gone completely still. In his species, this meant deep thought. We reached an escape pod, Rila continued. There were other people there. 5 of us total, but the pod only had safe space for 4 adults. A Drellian security officer was there. He started calculating who should go based on species value and survival probability. Jisoo didn't argue with him. She just put me in the pod first. Then she turned to the others and said something. I learned later what it meant. Children first, then everyone else. We'll find another pod. The Drellian tried to argue, but Jisoo wasn't listening. She was already pushing the others into the pod. She was going to stay behind, Rila paused. The silence in the chamber was total. But there was space. Barely. The Drellian recalculated and said we could all fit if we squeezed. So Jisoo got in last. She held me the whole time the pod launched. She held me while we escaped. She held me until the rescue ships found us. Rila looked up at the council with her crystalline eyes. By the time we were rescued, Jisoo had collapsed. The telepathic feedback had damaged her brain. The poison gas had damaged her lungs. The doctor said she almost died. She took a shaky breath. My parents didn't make it to the escape pods. 242 people died that day. But I lived. Because a human I had never met stopped running to save me. Ryla's voice grew stronger now. Every species in this galaxy has instincts. Survival, self-preservation. These are good instincts. They keep species alive. But this human felt everything I felt. The fear, the pain, the knowledge that we might both die. She felt all of it, and she stayed anyway. She looked around the chamber at all the different species watching her. I have one question for this council. Why? Why did she do that? Why did the human choose me over herself? The silence that followed was profound. No one moved. No one spoke. Council Director Thren's feathers remained perfectly still. Ambassador Hyan sat with her hands gripped together so tightly her knuckles were white. Dr. Minho had stopped taking notes and was simply staring at Rila. Finally, Rila spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. The Drellian guard ran past me. The Karathi family ran past me. Dozens of others ran past me. They all made the logical choice. The smart choice. The choice that kept them alive. She paused, and when she spoke again, her words would echo through history. But only the human stopped. Only the human chose to feel my pain. Only the human decided that saving me was worth dying for. So I ask again, why? What makes humans different? The chamber remained silent. But everyone present knew they had just heard something important. Something that would change how the galaxy saw humanity. And somewhere in the medical wing of the station, Jisoo lay sleeping, unaware that her simple act of compassion had just started a debate that would reshape galactic civilization. The chamber exploded with noise. Representatives from dozens of species started talking at once. Their translation devices created a mess of overlapping voices. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some were clearly upset by what they had heard. Ambassador Hyan stood up. Council Director, I request a recess so we can— Request denied, Thren said firmly. His feathers rippled with authority. This testimony requires immediate response. The council will hear arguments now. A tall figure stood up from the prosecution table. Advocate Voron was Drellian, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that calculated everything. He had been a prosecutor for 40 years. He spoke clearly and without emotion. This testimony is emotional and sad, Voron began. But emotion is exactly the problem here. The human engineer, Jisoo, violated 17 safety protocols during the Tarnis station evacuation. She endangered herself needlessly. She could have caused additional casualties by creating panic. He activated a hologram. Security footage from Tarnis station appeared in the air above the chamber floor. Everyone could see the chaos. People running, alarms flashing, and there was Jisoo, moving against the crowd, going back into danger. "Look at this," Vorun said. Every other species followed evacuation protocol. They moved in organized groups. They prioritized based on logical assessment. But this human, she abandoned her survival bag. She entered a contaminated zone. She physically handled a telepathic species during psychic overload, which any medical text will tell you is extremely dangerous. Hyun felt her jaw clench. This was going worse than she had feared. Vorun continued. "Order saves lives. Protocol saves lives. Emotion kills. This human got lucky. She survived. The child survived. But what about next time? What happens when a human's emotional reaction causes a bigger disaster?" Thren looked to the other side of the chamber. The defense may respond. Dr. Minho stood. He was older than Hyun, with gray in his hair and kind eyes. He had spent 30 years studying how different species think. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber. "Advocate Vorun is correct about the protocols," Minho said calmly. "Jisoo did break rules, but to understand why, you need to understand human neurology. May I explain?" Thren gestured permission. Minho activated his own display. Images of a human brain appeared. Humans have something called mirror neurons. When we see someone in pain, these neurons activate. Our brains simulate that pain. We don't just understand that someone is suffering. We actually feel a version of their suffering ourselves. He looked around the chamber. Most species evolved with strong barriers between self and other. This makes sense. It helps survival. But humans, our barriers are weak. When we see someone suffering, especially a child, our brain treats it almost like we are suffering. The pain becomes personal. A Karathi representative spoke up. "That sounds like a mental defect." Minho smiled sadly. "You call it a defect. We call it conscience. For many humans, the pain of watching someone suffer is greater than the fear of death. That's not illogical from our perspective. It's just a different calculation," Vorun interrupted. "Different calculations lead to different outcomes. The human's calculation almost killed her. But it saved the child," a voice said from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. A human military officer stood up. His uniform showed he was a captain. His name tag read, Daeho. He was older, maybe 50, with scars on his face that told stories of battles. Thren looked surprised. "Captain, you are not listed as a witness." "I was stationed at Tarnis during the incident," Daeho said. "I helped coordinate the evacuation. I request permission to testify." Thren considered, then nodded. "Permission granted. Come forward." Daeho walked to the witness platform where Rila had stood. He looked comfortable there, like a man used to speaking to important people. "I've served in mixed-species military units for 25 years, he began. "I've worked with Drellians, Karathi, Avixians, Quellans. Every species has their protocols. Drellians calculate survival percentages. Karathi make decisions as a group. Avixians follow rank structure," he paused. "Humans have protocols too. We train hard. We follow orders. We drill for emergencies. But we also have another protocol, one that comes from somewhere deeper than training. We don't leave people behind." Vorun stood again. "Captain, that's a nice sentiment, but it's not sentiment," Daeho said firmly. "It's how we survived as a species. Humans evolved in groups, small tribes where everyone knew everyone. If we left someone behind, we felt it personally. We mourned them. We remembered them. That feeling kept us together. It made us take care of each other." He looked at Rila, who was sitting with her guardian now. When Jisoo saw that child, her modern brain said run. But her old brain, the one that remembers tribes and families and the importance of every single person, that brain said save her. The old brain won. Thren leaned forward. "Captain, do you think this makes humans unreliable in emergency situations?" Daeho thought about this. Unreliable? No, unpredictable? Maybe, but here's what I know. When I was injured in battle, surrounded by enemy forces, it was a human medic who came back for me. She had clear orders to fall back. She ignored them. She pulled me out while taking fire. She should have died. We both should have died. But we didn't. So yes, we break protocol sometimes. Yes, we risk more than logic says we should. But we also save people that logic says aren't worth saving. We fight for people that calculations say are already dead. And sometimes we win. The chamber was quiet again. Different quiet than before. This was thoughtful silence. Then a young woman stood up in the gallery. She had dark hair like Hyun and tears running down her face. Security started moving toward her, but Thren raised a wing. "Who are you?" Thren asked. "My name is Yoonji," the young woman said, her voice shaking. "Jisoo is my sister." The chamber went completely silent. Yoonji wiped her eyes but kept talking. "My sister is in the medical wing right now. Her lungs are damaged. Her brain is damaged. She might never fully recover. And you're sitting here debating whether she followed protocol?" Her voice grew stronger. "She carried a child through poison gas. She felt that child's fear and pain and terror. She knew she might die. She did it anyway. And you want to know why?" Yoonji looked around at all the alien faces. "Because that's what humans do. We don't abandon children. We don't calculate who deserves to live based on species utility or survival probability. We see someone who needs help and we help them. Even if it hurts us, even if it kills us." Security was close now, ready to escort her out. But Thren held up his wing again. "Let her finish," he said quietly. Yoonji took a shaky breath. When Jisoo was 10 years old, she almost drowned in a river. A stranger pulled her out. Someone who didn't know her name, didn't know our family. He just saw a child in trouble and jumped in. He didn't think about protocol. He didn't calculate odds. He just saved her. That's why she became an engineer on space stations. She wanted to be ready to help people. She wanted to be that stranger who jumps in. And when the moment came when she saw Ryla alone and scared, she didn't even think. She just did what humans do. She helped. Yoonji looked directly at Advocate Voren. "You say emotion kills, but my sister's emotion saved a life. Rila is alive because a human cared more about a stranger's child than about following rules. If that's a defect, then I hope humans never get fixed." She sat down. The chamber remained silent. Even Voren seemed unsure what to say. Finally, Ryla stood up again. Her guardian tried to stop her, but Rila gently moved the guardian's hand away. She walked back to the witness platform. Her crystalline body showed colors now, shifting patterns that were hard to read. "May I speak again?" she asked. Thren nodded. Rila looked at Varun. Her voice was clear and calm. "You talk about protocols and survival rates. You show footage of what Jisoo did wrong, but you don't understand what really happened. When Jisoo held me, I felt everything she felt. I felt her fear. I felt her pain. I felt her body screaming at her to run. But I also felt something else. I felt her choice." Rila stepped closer to the edge of the platform. She knew she might die. She thought about it. For 3 heartbeats, I felt her thinking about it. And you know what? She decided it was worth it. Even if we both died, even if her choice made no logical sense, leaving me alone in the dark was unacceptable to her. The small alien child looked around at the massive chamber full of representatives from across the galaxy. Not illogical, unacceptable, there's a difference. "Can you understand that?" No one answered. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thren stood up slowly. His feathers showed deep blue now, which in his species meant serious thought. "This hearing is more complicated than I expected. We will take a recess. 3 days. Council members, think carefully about what you have heard. When we return, we will discuss what this means for humanity's role in galactic society." He looked at Rila. "Thank you, child. Your testimony has given us much to consider." As the chamber emptied, Hyun made her way to Yoonji. The 2 women hugged without speaking. Around them, representatives from different species talked in small groups. Some looked troubled, some looked thoughtful. All of them were beginning to see humans in a different way. And in the medical wing, Jisoo slept on, unaware that her sister had just defended her to the entire galaxy. The 3-day recess felt like 3 weeks to Ambassador Hyun. She spent the time in meetings with her team, preparing for what came next. Dr. Minho brought her coffee in her office late on the 2nd night. She looked tired. "You should rest," Minho said gently. "I can't," Hyun replied. "Kyung found something. Data we didn't know existed. Kyung was a data analyst, young and brilliant. He had been searching through galactic records for the past 3 days. What he found was troubling." The next morning, Hyun called an emergency meeting with her team. Kyung projected his findings onto the wall screen. It was a timeline stretching back 10 years. Red dots marked incidents across the galaxy. There are 247 incidents, Kyung explained. All of them involve humans making what other species call irrational choices during emergencies. The galactic community has been keeping track. He clicked through examples. A fire on Mars colony where a human firefighter named Hana rushed into a collapsing building to save 3 Quellan children. A mining disaster on Titan where a human medic called Junho gave his oxygen to an injured Avixian, knowing he would suffocate. An Europa station breach where a human engineer named Yuna sealed a hull rupture manually, sacrificing her escape route. They're watching us, Hyun said quietly. They're documenting every time we break their rules to save someone. Minho studied the data. Some of these humans died. Hana didn't make it out of that building. Yunho suffocated. Yuna was blown into space. 127 deaths total, Kyung confirmed. But they saved 2,847 lives. The room went quiet. When the council reconvened, the chamber was packed. More observers than before. More journalists. Everyone sensed this was important. A new speaker stood to address the council. Envoy Talon was Karathi, part of a hive mind species. When he spoke for thousands of connected minds. The Karathi Collective has reviewed the data, Talon said. His voice was strange, like many voices speaking as one. We find the pattern concerning. Humans cannot be trusted in crisis scenarios. They prioritize emotion over logic. This makes them unreliable and dangerous in mixed species emergency situations. He projected the same data Kyung had found. 247 incidents, 127 human deaths. These deaths were unnecessary. If humans followed logical protocols, they would still be alive. Hyun felt cold. This was worse than she thought. They weren't just questioning one incident. They were questioning all of humanity, Talon continued. The Karathi Collective proposes restrictions. Humans should be removed from emergency response positions. They should be prohibited from making life or death decisions in mixed species scenarios. Their emotional instability is a liability we cannot accept. Several species representatives nodded in agreement. Thren looked to the human delegation. Ambassador Hyun, how do you respond? But before Hyun could stand, someone else did. An elderly human woman walked slowly to the witness platform. She looked to be in her late 60s with gray hair and gentle eyes. Her name was Sora, and she was a historian. Honorable Council, Sora began. I am not a diplomat or a scientist. I am a teacher. I study human history, and I think you need to understand where this behavior comes from. She activated a display showing images from Earth's past. Humans were not always peaceful. For thousands of years we fought each other. Tribe against tribe. Nation against nation. We were very good at killing. But we were also learning, slowly, painfully, we created rules for war. The Geneva Conventions, we called them. Rules that said even in war, you protect those who cannot fight. You protect children. You protect the wounded. You protect prisoners. She showed more images. Doctors treating enemy soldiers. Refugees being fed by people from different nations. Rescue workers pulling strangers from rubble. We built organizations dedicated to helping people we had never met. People who could never pay us back. People from nations we had fought against. We called it humanitarian work. We said that being civilized meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. Sora looked at Talon. You call it irrational. You say we should calculate who deserves saving based on utility and survival probability. But we spent thousands of years learning the opposite lesson. We learned that the measure of civilization is not how we treat those who benefit us. It is how we treat those who cannot. She paused. If a child is drowning, we don't stop to calculate if that child will grow up to be useful to society. We save the child because that is what civilized beings do. That is the only calculation that matters. A young woman in medical scrubs stood up in the gallery. My name is Mirai. I work in the medical bay here on the station. I worked with Jisoo. Thren nodded for her to continue. 2 months before Tarnus, Jisoo asked me why I became a medic. She knew it was dangerous work. She wanted to know why I chose it, Mirai said. I told her about when I was 8 years old. I was swimming and got pulled under by a current. I was drowning. A man jumped in and saved me. A complete stranger. He didn't know my name, didn't know my family, didn't calculate whether I was worth saving. He just saw someone drowning and dove in. The water was freezing. He could have died. But he saved me. Mireille's voice grew stronger. I became a medic because I wanted to be that person for someone else. I wanted to be the one who didn't stop to calculate odds, who didn't check species compatibility, who just helped because someone needed help. That's what Jisoo was doing, being that person, the person who stops, the person who helps. Is that really something you want to take away from the galaxy? Advocate Voran stood again. He seemed frustrated now. These stories are emotional, but they ignore facts. The human emotional response does not guarantee success. I have data showing 3 incidents where humans died trying to save others, and the people they tried to save died anyway. He projected new footage. Here, a human trying to reach trapped workers in a collapsed mine. She died in a secondary collapse. The workers died too. Here, a human attempting to rescue passengers from a damaged ship. He died when the ship exploded. The passengers died too. Here, a human trying to pull survivors from a burning building. The building collapsed. Everyone died. Voran looked around the chamber. Human emotions add to the body count. They throw their lives away on hopeless causes. A logical species would accept that some losses are inevitable and minimize total casualties. Humans maximize casualties with their pointless heroics. The chamber filled with murmurs, some agreeing, some disagreeing. The debate was growing heated. Then a small voice cut through the noise. May I speak? Everyone turned. Rila had stood up again. She looked small and fragile, but her voice was clear. Thren quieted the chamber with a gesture. Of course, child. Rila walked to the witness platform. She looked directly at Voran. You show videos of humans failing, of humans dying while trying to save others. You say this proves they are foolish. But I need to tell you something. Something I felt when Jisoo held me. The chamber went completely silent. She knew we might both die. She thought about it. I felt her thinking about it. She knew the odds were bad. She knew she might fail. But she also knew something else. Rila's crystalline body glowed brighter. She knew that trying was important. Even if we both died, trying mattered. Because leaving me alone, leaving me to die scared and alone in the dark, that was unacceptable. Not because it was illogical. Unacceptable because it was wrong. You talk about body counts and success rates, but you don't understand. For Jisoo, for humans, some things matter more than success. Some things matter more than survival. She looked around at all the representatives. You ask if humans are reliable. You ask if they can be trusted. But you are asking the wrong questions. The question should be, do we want to live in a galaxy where people calculate whether someone deserves to be saved? Or do we want to live in a galaxy where people try to save each other, even when it is hard? Because those are different galaxies. And I know which one I want to live in. She stepped down from the platform. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Thren stood. His feathers showed colors that meant deep thought and uncertainty. This council has much to consider. We are not just deciding about one human's actions. We are deciding what kind of society we want to be. The question before us is this. Should humanity be restricted from positions of emergency authority due to their emotional override of survival protocols? But I am beginning to think that is not the real question. He looked around the chamber. The real question is whether logic and emotion are truly opposites. Whether survival and morality must always conflict. Whether a civilization can be both efficient and compassionate. We will recess again. 1 week this time. I want every species represented here to think carefully, not just about humans, but about ourselves, about what we have become in our pursuit of efficiency, about what we might have lost along the way. As the chamber emptied, Hyun found Rila with her guardian. The small Valkyrie child looked tired. That was very brave, Hyun said gently. Rila looked up at her. Is Jisoo awake yet? Hyun shook her head. Not yet, but the doctors say she is getting stronger. Good, Rila said. I am learning English. I want to talk to her in her language. I want to understand what she said to me in the corridor. What did she say? Hyun asked. Rila's colors shifted to something warm and bright. I don't know. Ambassador Hyun walked quickly through the medical wing. Her shoes clicked on the clean white floors. She had received a message 20 minutes ago, and she had dropped everything to come here. Jisoo was awake. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of medical machines. Jisoo lay in bed looking small and pale. Tubes connected her to various devices. Her sister Yunji sat beside her, holding her hand. Jisoo, Hyun said gently, how are you feeling? Jisoo turned her head slowly. Her voice was weak. Ambassador, they told me you've been at council hearings. Because of me. Not because of you, Hyun said, sitting in a chair on the other side of the bed. Because of what you represent. Because of questions the galaxy needs to answer. Jisoo closed her eyes briefly. Is Rila okay? She's fine. She's been testifying at the hearing, telling everyone what happened. Good, Jisoo whispered. Then she opened her eyes and looked at Hyun. They want to know why I did it. Yes. They want me to testify, don't they? Hyun nodded. You don't have to. The doctors say you need rest. But if you want to speak, I'll do it, Jisoo said quietly. Someone needs to explain. They need to understand we're not broken. We're just different. 3 days later, Jisoo was wheeled into the council chamber. She sat in a medical chair with wheels, an oxygen mask hanging around her neck in case she needed it. She looked fragile, but her eyes were clear and focused. The chamber, usually filled with debate and noise, went silent when she entered. Everyone could see how much the rescue had cost her. Council Director Thren spoke gently. Engineer Jisoo, thank you for coming. We know you are still recovering. Please take your time. Tell us in your own words why you stopped for the child. Jisoo took a slow breath. I didn't plan to stop. I was running like everyone else. My brain was screaming at me to keep going. Every survival instinct I had was telling me to save myself. But then I saw her. This small child alone collapsed in a corner, and I couldn't keep running. It wasn't a decision. It was an impossibility. I could no more leave her there than I could stop my heart from beating. Advocate Vorin stood. Were you aware you might die? Yes, Jisoo said simply. Were you aware the child might die anyway, despite your efforts? Yes. Were you aware that your death could traumatize the child further? That she would carry guilt for your sacrifice? Jisoo's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I thought about all of that. In the 5 seconds I stood there, I thought about everything that could go wrong. Everything that made stopping a bad idea. And yet you stopped anyway, Varun said. Yes. Jisoo wiped her eyes, because I realized something in those 5 seconds. If I survived and left her, I would carry that moment for the rest of my life. I would see her face every time I closed my eyes. I would hate myself. I would become someone I couldn't live with. She looked directly at Vorin. So maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I saved her so I could save myself from becoming someone who abandoned a child. Maybe that makes me irrational by your standards. But I can live with being irrational. I couldn't live with being someone who walked away. The chamber was completely quiet. Then an old man stood up in the gallery. He was human, maybe 60 years old, and he was missing his left arm. May I speak? He asked. Thren looked surprised but nodded. Please come forward. Tell us who you are. The man walked to the witness platform. My name is Haru. I was a rescue specialist for 30 years. I trained Jisoo when she was learning emergency protocols. He looked at his missing arm. I lost this pulling a family from a burning building. The building collapsed. I got them out, but I didn't get out fast enough. The doctor said I was lucky to survive. I taught Jisoo everything I knew. Safety protocols, risk assessment, how to calculate odds in emergency situations. She was my best student. She followed every rule perfectly. Haru paused. But I also taught her something else. I taught her that sometimes the right thing and the safe thing are different. That rules exist to protect people, but sometimes protecting people means breaking rules. I taught her that you don't become a rescue specialist to always choose safe. You become a rescue specialist because you can't stand to watch people suffer, because you would rather risk your own life than live with the memory of doing nothing. He looked at Jisoo with pride. She did exactly what I trained her to do. She followed the most important protocol of all. Don't abandon people who need help. Another voice spoke from the audience. A human woman stood up. My name is Nari. I study ethics and philosophy. May I offer a perspective? Thren nodded. Nari walked forward. The council is trying to understand human behavior through the lens of survival logic. But humans don't base all our decisions on survival. We base many of them on moral principles that exist independent of survival benefit. For example, we have a concept called the categorical imperative. It means you should act as if your action becomes a universal law. If everyone abandoned children in danger, What kind of world would we have? We reject that world, so we choose differently, she continued. We have another concept, the veil of ignorance. Make decisions not knowing your position in society. Would you want to live in a world where people calculate whether you deserve rescue based on your utility? Most humans say no, so we build a different world. Most species evolved ethics from survival advantage, Nari explained. Behaviors that helped your group survive became morally good. But humans developed something unusual. We feel moral obligations to things that don't help us survive at all. We feed strangers. We rescue enemies. We weep for suffering we don't personally experience. She looked around the chamber. This isn't despite our intelligence. It's part of our intelligence. We understand that a society is judged by how it treats its weakest members, and we try to build a society worthy of that judgment. The session continued for hours. Testimony after testimony. Different perspectives on the same question. What makes humans act this way? Finally, as the day was ending, they wheeled Jisoo out of the chamber. She was exhausted. In the corridor, she saw Rila waiting with her guardian. The small Velkari child ran to her. The guardian tried to stop her, worried about the contact, but Rila was gentle. She took Jisoo's hand carefully. "Thank you," Rila whispered in English. The words were careful, practiced. Jisoo smiled weakly. "You learned my language. I wanted to understand what you said to me." In the corridor, when you held me, Jisoo's eyes filled with tears. I said Gwenchanha nega isa. It means, it's okay, I'm here. Rila's crystalline body glowed with warm colors. Why do humans do this? Why do you hurt yourselves for others? Jisoo thought for a moment. Because we remember what it feels like to be scared and alone. And we never want anyone to feel that way. Not if we can help it. Even if helping costs you everything? Even then, Jisoo said softly. Because some things matter more than our own lives. You mattered to me. You still matter. That child in the corridor wasn't just a stranger. She was someone's daughter, someone's hope for the future. She was precious, and precious things are worth protecting. Rila held her hand gently, and through the contact she felt what Jisoo felt. Not pain this time, not fear, just a deep, quiet certainty that what she had done was right. I understand now, Rila whispered. You didn't save me despite the danger. You saved me because you are human, because being human means caring more about others than about yourself. Jisoo smiled through her tears. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We fail sometimes. But we try. We always try. That is why you are special, Rila said. Not because you succeed. Because you try even when you might fail. Because you care even when caring hurts. They sat together in the quiet corridor, a human and an alien child, connected by an act of compassion that had changed both their lives. Inside the council chamber, the representatives continued their debate, but outside in that quiet moment, two beings understood what the council was struggling to grasp. That some truths cannot be calculated. Some values cannot be measured. Some choices are right not because they make logical sense, but because they make the world a little bit better. And sometimes the most important question is not, what gives us the best chance of survival? But what kind of people do we want to be? For humans, the answer was simple. They wanted to be the kind of people who stopped for scared children in the dark, the kind who tried even when trying might kill them, the kind who cared even when caring made no logical sense. And now the galaxy had to decide if that was a flaw worth fixing or a gift worth protecting. The final session of the council hearing was different. The chamber felt heavier somehow, like everyone knew this was the moment that would change everything. Ambassador Hyon sat with her team, nervous. Next to her, Dr. Minho looked calm, but his hands were clasped tight. In the medical section, Jisoo sat in her wheelchair with Yunji beside her. Rila was in the front row with her guardian. Council Director Thren stood up. His feathers were still, showing he had made his decision. Before we vote, there is one more witness. Someone whose voice has been missing from these proceedings. The chamber doors opened. An old Drellian entered, moving slowly with a walking aid. His gray skin looked weathered and his breathing was labored. He made his way carefully to the witness platform. Ambassador Thorn, the Drellian representative, stood up suddenly. His face showed shock. The old Drellian reached the platform and turned to face the council. When he spoke, his voice was weak but clear. My name is Vorin. 50 years ago, I was a junior engineer on a transport ship called Valdris. Thorn sat down heavily, staring. Vorin continued. Our ship had a catastrophic life support failure. We had 6 crew members and oxygen enough for 4 people for 3 hours. Following Drellian protocol, we calculated survival value. Who had the most training? Who had the most potential contribution to society? Who was most valuable? I was ranked number 6. Bottom of the list. Young, inexperienced, no special skills. According to our calculations, I should die so others could live. It was logical. It was correct. It followed protocol perfectly. The chamber was completely silent, so we sealed the life support. 4 of us would breathe. 2 of us would suffocate. It took 40 minutes. We followed protocol. We were efficient. We were logical. And 2 people died while the rest of us breathed easily. Foreign paused, breathing hard. 3 hours later, a rescue ship found us. It was a human ship. The medical team came aboard and found me. I was barely alive. Brain damage from oxygen deprivation. Multiple organ failure. Survival probability, 8%. The human medic was named Hijin. She was young, maybe 25. Her captain told her to focus on the survivors with better odds. There were other crew members with higher survival chances. Helping me would waste resources. Vorin looked around the chamber, but Hijin looked at me and said something I will never forget. She said 8% is not 0%. Let's fight for that 8%. She spent 16 hours keeping me alive. 16 hours she could have used helping others. Her captain argued with her. Her team told her it was pointless. But she kept working. She kept fighting for my 8%. Tears were visible on Vorin's gray face. I survived. Against logic. Against probability. Against protocol. Because a human decided that my life mattered. Not because I was valuable. Not because I had potential. Just because I was alive and she could help. Today I am a physician. In the past 50 years, I have saved 1,247 lives. I have trained 300 doctors. I have developed 2 new medical techniques that are used across the galaxy. He looked directly at Advocate Vorin. All of that exists because a human medic fought for an 8% chance, because she valued life over logic, because she saw a person, not a probability. This council debates whether human empathy is a flaw. I am living proof that it is not. I am here because humans don't calculate who deserves to live. They simply help whoever needs help. Vorin stepped down from the platform. The chamber remained silent as he made his way back to his seat. Ambassador Thorne stood up slowly. He walked to the center of the chamber. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. Vorin was my crewmate. I was number 4 on that list. I survived. He was supposed to die. I have thought about that day every day for 50 years. We followed our protocols. We were logical. We made the efficient choice. And I have never forgiven myself for being logical enough to breathe while others suffocated. He looked around at his fellow representatives. Maybe the human flaw is not a flaw at all. Maybe it is what we lost when we became too civilized, too efficient, too logical to remember that every life has value beyond calculations. Council Director Thren stood. The time has come for us to vote. The question before us: should humanity be restricted from positions of emergency authority due to demonstrated empathic override of survival protocols? He paused. But before we vote, I want to say something. This hearing has made me question assumptions I have held for decades. About logic. About survival. About the purpose of civilization. We have built a galaxy based on efficiency and order. These are good things. They have brought peace and prosperity, but somewhere along the way, many of us forgot something important. We forgot that civilization is not just about surviving. It is about how we survive, about who we become in the process. Thren looked at Rila. A child asked us a question. She asked why a human stopped when everyone else ran. We have spent days trying to answer with logic and analysis, but perhaps the answer is simpler. The human stopped because that is what compassion looks like. Real compassion, not calculated kindness. The kind that costs something. The kind that might kill you. The kind that values life above survival statistics. Now we vote, species by species. On the record, the voting began. Each species representative stood and declared their vote. The display board showed the results in real time. Drellian Concordat. Against restriction. Ambassador Thorne's vote surprised many. But Vorin's testimony had changed minds. Karathi Collective for restriction. But the vote was close within the hive mind. Nearly half had wanted to vote against. Avixian Federation against restriction. Quell an assembly against restriction. Species after species voted. The numbers climbed. Against restriction. Against restriction. For restriction. Against restriction. Hyun held her breath as the final votes came in. The final tally appeared. 312 species against restriction. 35 species for restriction. The chamber erupted in noise, not angry noise. Noise of relief, surprise, hope. Thren raised his wing for silence. Let the record show that on this day, the Galactic Council voted to preserve human participation in emergency services. Furthermore, the Council hereby recognizes humanity as a compassionate intervention species with unique protocols for emergency response. What does that mean? Someone called out. Thren looked around the chamber. It means we acknowledge that there are different valid approaches to emergency response. Logical triage has its place, but so does human compassion. Both have value. Both save lives. Neither is wrong. It means that when humans break protocol to save someone, we will not punish them for following their conscience. We will recognize that they are following a different protocol, one based on the value of individual life over statistical optimization. He looked directly at Jisoo. It means that what you did was not wrong. It was not illogical. It was not a flaw to be corrected. It was human. And the galaxy is better for it. Jisoo felt tears running down her face. Yoonji hugged her tightly. Thren continued. This council has learned something today. We learned that efficiency is not the only measure of civilization, that survival is not the only goal worth pursuing, that sometimes the illogical choice is also the right choice. Humanity has reminded us of something we had forgotten, that civilization is measured not by how efficiently we survive, but by what we choose to value when survival is not at stake. Let the record show that today, we chose to protect that value, because a galaxy where no one stops for a scared child is not a galaxy worth saving. The chamber erupted in applause. Not all species understood the gesture, but they understood what it meant. Something important had happened here. Rila broke free from her guardian and ran to Jisoo. She threw her arms around the human woman, carefully, gently. Through the contact, Jisoo felt what Rila felt. Joy, relief, gratitude, love. You changed the galaxy, Rila whispered in English. Not with weapons or technology. With kindness, Jisoo held her close. No, we changed it together. You were brave enough to ask the right question. Why did I stop? That question made everyone think. I know the answer now, Rila said. You stopped because you are human. Because humans believe that every life is precious. Because you would rather die trying than live knowing you did nothing. Jisoo smiled through her tears. Yes, that is what we believe. And now the galaxy knows it too. As the chamber slowly emptied, species representatives stopped to speak with the human delegation. Some thanked them. Some apologized for doubting. Some asked questions about human culture and values. Old Vorin approached Jisoo with Ambassador Thorn. The old Drellian looked at the young human woman. 50 years ago, a human saved my life. Today, you saved something more important. You saved the idea that life has value beyond calculations. Thorn spoke quietly. I have carried guilt for 50 years. Today, you helped me understand something. Following protocol is not the same as doing right. Sometimes we must choose between being logical and being good. Humans choose good. Perhaps the rest of us should learn from that. Later that evening in the medical wing, Jisoo rested while friends visited. Hyunji, Hyun, Dr. Minho, Mireille. They talked about what would happen next, about how this decision would change things. 23 species have already requested to study human empathy, Minho said.